Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, the story continues with Hoai Ca and Hùng, two people who have always appeared quietly in the background, yet play an essential role in Tusan's journey. In this video, together with CEO Hoai, they secretly prepared a surprise, something Tusan never expected, and something that deeply moved her when she finally faced it. But to understand why that moment touched her so profoundly, we need to return to the days when Tusan first left the shared family home to begin her own life. From the day Tusan moved out to live independently, Hùng and Hoai Ca were no longer by her side every day as before. There were no longer full family meals, no more evenings when everyone sat together talking. Yet their care for Tusan never faded. Hùng was a man of few words, never good at expressing himself verbally, so he chose to watch over her from afar. Whenever someone mentioned Tusan, he would quietly listen, wondering in his heart whether she had been tired lately, whether Ivy was healthy, whether work had become too overwhelming. As for Hoai Ca, though she rarely asked directly, every story related to Tusan and Ivy was carefully remembered. Though she was Tusan's sister-in-law, Hoai Ca cared for her no differently than a real younger sister. There were nights when everyone else had already fallen asleep, yet Hoai Ca remained awake, lost in thought. She recalled the days when Tusan endured so many hardships, remembered the image of a slender young woman holding her child, trying to appear strong in front of others. Hoai Ca understood clearly that Tusan was not someone who complained. The more tired and pressured she felt, the quieter she became. And it was precisely that silence that often led others to believe Tusan was fine, that she could handle everything on her own. Each time Hoai Ca happened to hear about Tusan's current life, her heart grew heavier. Ivy was growing up, and with that came countless worries, small, yet never simple. From meals and sleep to education and daily work, nearly everything rested on Tusan's shoulders. Hoai Ca knew that Tusan always put her child before everything else. She could skip meals, wear old clothes, work until exhaustion, so long as Ivy was cared for, joyful, and able to grow up as innocently as any other child. What pained Hoai Ca the most was learning that Tusan was quietly preparing Ivy's birthday. Nothing extravagant, nothing showy, just simple things, a modest cake, a few toys Ivy liked, a warm evening devoted entirely to her child. In the midst of all that, Tusan completely forgot one thing: her own birthday was also approaching. Hoai Ca realized this by chance while looking at the calendar, and her heart tightened. There are people who, after becoming so accustomed to sacrifice, eventually forget that they, too, deserve to be cared for. Hùng noticed this change in his sister as well. He didn't say it aloud, but whenever Tusan was mentioned, his eyes would grow heavier. More than anyone, he understood what Tusan had been through, and why she chose to live the way she did now. And so, even though Hùng and Hoai Ca were not physically present beside Tusan every day, in their hearts, she had never been forgotten. Their silence, their distance, was simply their way of respecting Tusan's choices, while quietly searching for a way to make it up to her in their own way. It was from these thoughts that Hoai Ca began to struggle inwardly. She didn't want Tusan to remain someone who only cared for others while neglecting her own feelings. She wanted Tusan, if only once, to be at the center, to be surprised, to be loved in a fuller way. And as that thought became clearer, Hoai Ca knew she couldn't do it alone. Hùng, quiet yet steadfast as always, was ready to listen. And then, the name CEO Hoai was mentioned, like a crucial missing piece in all the things that had yet to be spoken. One afternoon, CEO Hoai took the initiative to meet Hùng and Hoai Ca. It wasn't in a luxurious office, nor was it arranged through formal, work-related calls. The meeting happened naturally, the way people who genuinely care for one another choose to begin a conversation. Hai arrived with his familiar calm demeanor, yet there was something heavier in his eyes than usual. He didn't talk about partnerships, plans, or numbers. Instead, he went straight to what had been weighing on his mind for days. Hai spoke openly about Ivy's upcoming birthday. He said he had noticed for a long time how Tusan prepared everything for her child, paying attention to even the smallest details. And then, while casually checking the calendar, he realized something that Tusan herself might not have noticed. Her own birthday was only a few days away as well. Hai spoke slowly, each sentence clear, without exaggeration or dramatic emotion. He simply said that Tusan had always been like this, always putting her child first, always forgetting herself. Not because she didn't need care, but because she had grown too accustomed to carrying everything on her own. At that point, Hung fell silent. He didn't respond right away. As her older brother, Hung understood Tusan better than anyone. Old memories seemed to surface all at once, from childhood to the present day. Even when they were young, Tusan had always been the one who yielded. If there was something good, she would let others have it first. When things were difficult, she chose silence over complaint. As she grew older and stepped into a life full of upheaval, she kept that same habit, always standing behind, always telling herself that she could endure it. After becoming a mother, that self-sacrifice became even more apparent. To Tusan, Ivy was almost everything. She could forget her days off, lose track of time, even ignore her own emotions as long as her child was cared for. Hung knew this clearly, because he had seen his sister exhausted yet still smiling, had watched her growth in her day by day while insisting that she was fine. And so, when Hai spoke those words, Hung wasn't surprised. He simply felt the weight settle heavier in his heart. Hung turned to Hoai Ca. Without a word, just a look, the two of them understood each other. Hoai Ca couldn't hide her emotion either. As a sister-in-law, she didn't share a blood bond, yet she had seen Tusan from a different perspective, close, quiet, and filled with empathy. Hoai Ca had often wondered why Tusan always forgot herself, and each time, she felt more pain than blame. Hoai Ca was the first to speak. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and firm. As a sister-in-law in the family, she didn't want Tusan to remain someone who only gave and never received anything in return. Hoai Ca said that if they were already planning Ivy's birthday, then they should make it complete, not just a celebration for the child, but a surprise meaningful enough for Tusan to feel loved as well. Not luxury gifts, but the feeling of being remembered, of being placed at the center, even if just for one evening. Hoai Ca shared that she wanted Tusan to understand something simple, yet so often forgotten, that behind her, there was always family. A brother, a sister-in-law, and people willing to stand beside her, not out of obligation, but out of love. One evening where both Ivy and Tusan would be the main characters, where mother and daughter alike would be seen, cherished, and valued in the truest sense. Hai listened to every word without interrupting, without rushing to state his own opinion. He saw the shared understanding in Hung's eyes and the determination in Hoai Ca's voice. This wasn't a plan born of logic, but a desire that came from people who truly understood Tusan. No one said too much, yet in that quiet space, it felt as though something had already been agreed upon. Hung remained silent, but this silence no longer came from hesitation. It was the result of deep thought. He understood that some things, if not done now, Tusan might never ask for herself. And, because of that, the responsibility of those standing behind her became even clearer. The conversation didn't last long, but every word, every glance carried many unspoken thoughts, as if this was only the first step toward something slowly taking shape. From that day on, Hung and Hoai Ca began preparing everything quietly. There were no loud discussions, no visible signs that might raise Tusan's suspicion. Everything unfolded in silence, just as they had always cared for her all these years. Hùng took charge of the overall arrangement. He carefully calculated every timeline from Tusan's work schedule, Ivy's pickup times, to the rare gaps in her day. His only goal was to ensure that everything would flow smoothly and naturally, so that Tusan would sense nothing out of the ordinary. Hùng understood his sister's daily habits well. He knew Tusan was sensitive, that even the smallest change could make her suspicious. That was why every plan had to be subtly woven into the rhythm of everyday life. Phone calls, casual meetups, everything was arranged to look like the most ordinary routine. Hùng allowed himself no mistakes, because he knew that if Tusan discovered anything, the surprise would no longer be complete. Meanwhile, Hoai Ca took on the part that required more delicacy and attention to detail. She began listing every small element, from how to decorate the house so it would feel warm but not overly showy, to choosing a cake that would suit Ivy perfectly. Hoai Ca understood Ivy's preferences, but she was equally mindful of Tusan's emotions. She wanted the atmosphere that evening to feel gentle enough for Tusan to feel at ease, yet special enough for her to realize that this was not just an ordinary day. Preparing gifts for Ivy was something Hoai Ca considered very carefully. She didn't choose anything extravagant, but rather items closely tied to Ivy's interests, things the little girl had casually mentioned in her innocent conversations. Hoai Ca believed that for a child, joy didn't lie in the value of a gift, but in the feeling of being heard and understood. And that was the feeling she wanted Ivy to have on her birthday. More special still was the birthday cake prepared specifically for Tusan. Hoai Ca spent a long time thinking about this choice. She didn't want the cake to be overly elaborate, nor did she want it to feel like a display. She only hoped it would be enough for Tusan to realize that someone remembered the day she was born, remembered her existence as an individual, not just as a mother who always stood behind her child. Hoai Ca thought about the past years, when Tusan had likely let her birthday pass quietly like any other day, and her heart couldn't help but feel heavy. Throughout the entire process, CEO Hai maintained a very clear role. He respected every decision made by Hùng and Hoai Ca, never interfering, never imposing his own ideas. Hai understood that this was not just a birthday celebration, but a family story, one belonging to those closest to Tusan. He chose to cooperate quietly, offering support at the right moments and in the right ways, ensuring that everything went as smoothly as possible. His presence was never loud, but always steady and reliable. The part Hai prepared for Ivy was done with great care as well. He chose toys that Ivy had loved for a long time, things that, for various reasons, she still hadn't had. Hai remembered clearly every time Ivy had mentioned them in passing, every eager look in her eyes when she saw them. To him, these were not just gifts, but a way for Ivy to feel that someone was always listening and remembering those small, precious details. Everything was kept secret. No one let Tusan know, no hints, no unusual actions. Each person reminded themselves to be especially careful, because everyone hoped to see a truly surprised expression on Tusan's face. It wasn't just about surprise, but about an emotion being touched, about being loved in a way she perhaps hadn't felt for a very long time. During those days of preparation, Tusan continued living her life as usual. She remained busy with work, continued worrying over Ivy in every small way, and thought far more about her daughter's birthday than anything else. That very innocence only made Hùng, Hoai Ca, and Hai more certain that their decision was right. And within that shared silence, everything seemed to be slowly, carefully put into place, waiting for the right moment to finally reveal itself. Dui de la ban dike tieng on lean mok, ju dung nip kacham, kam suk dang chow, chow treo bat ngo, fu hop cho voiceover / kitch ban YouTube, kong them chi teet, Trong ton voi noi dung bandua. That evening, Tusan returned home with an entirely ordinary state of mind. In her thoughts, it was simply another dinner like any other, perhaps a little warmer because Ivy's birthday was approaching. She was still busy calculating what dishes might be missing from the meal, her mind occupied with the small cake she planned to buy for her daughter. Everything felt familiar, with not a single sign that made her suspect the evening would be any different. The moment the door opened, before Tusan could even call out, the house suddenly lit up. The lights switched on all at once, applause erupted unexpectedly, and she froze in place. In that brief instant, Tusan barely had time to react. Before her eyes was no longer the usual, familiar space, but a home neatly and warmly decorated, filled with small details that left her stunned and overwhelmed. Ivy was the quickest to react. She squealed with delight at the sight of the birthday cake neatly placed on the table alongside brand new toys. Her eyes sparkled, her clear laughter echoed throughout the room, completely unable to hide her joy. For Ivy, it was a moment overflowing with happiness, a truly special evening she had longed for, where all the beautiful things seemed to appear at once. Hoai Ca quickly stepped forward and lifted Ivy into her arms. She gently soothed the child, both to calm her excitement and to give Tusan a moment of stillness to process the surprise before her. Meanwhile, Hùng stood behind them, not stepping forward right away. He simply watched his sister in silence, looking at her motionless figure, her eyes still filled with disbelief, as if she had yet to fully grasp what was happening. Tusan slowly looked around, feeling as though everything in front of her had begun to move in slow motion. She saw Hoai Ca, saw Hùng, saw Ivy smiling brightly in her sister-in-law's arms. The emotions rising inside her were difficult to name. There was surprise, confusion, and somewhere beneath it all, a tightness swelling rapidly in her chest. Tusan said nothing, remaining still, as if afraid that if she spoke, her emotions would spill out beyond control. On the table, 2 cakes were placed side by side, clearly visible. One was for Ivy, bright and colorful, perfectly suited for a child. The other was simpler, yet carried a very different meaning. Tusan stared at that cake, a strange feeling stirring within her. She couldn't remember the last time she had a birthday cake of her own, or whether she ever truly had one at all. Only then did Hùng step forward. He walked slowly, each step steady and deliberate. Standing in front of Tusan, he didn't say much. His voice was low and clear as he called her name and wished her a happy birthday. Just a few simple words, yet each one carried the care he had held in his heart for so long. For Hùng, it wasn't merely a birthday wish, but an acknowledgement of his sister, the one who had silently carried so much without ever asking for anything in return. Hoai Ca moved to Tusan's side and gently took her hand. Her grip was warm and firm, like an unspoken reassurance. Hoai Ca's voice was soft, carrying the closeness of a sister within the family, no distance, no formality. She said that this time, Tusan shouldn't think only about Ivy anymore. That Tusan, too, deserved to be loved, cared for, and remembered in her own way. Those words were not loud, yet they reached deeply. Tusan lowered her head, her lashes trembling. She still hadn't found the words to speak, but her emotions were already filling her chest. She could clearly feel her family's presence beside her, feel that her long, silent sacrifices had never been forgotten. As the atmosphere gradually settled, everyone's gaze naturally turned towards CEO Hoai. He stepped forward slowly, without haste. In his hands was a small box, held with great care. Hoai didn't speak immediately. He looked at Tusan for a moment, as if weighing every word he was about to say. Hai placed the box into Tusan's hands, his movement gentle yet certain. He spoke slowly, without flowery language or dramatic expressions. Hai simply said that he wanted Tusan to know something very simple, yet deeply important, that in his eyes, she was not only Ivy's mother, not only someone who always sacrificed for her child, but a woman who deserved to be respected and loved in her own right. Tusan tightened her grip around the box. The coolness of its surface seeped into her palm, while her heart gradually grew warmer. She looked up at Hai, then turned to Hung and Hoai Ca, and finally to Ivy, who was still laughing endlessly. In that moment, emotions intertwined and overlapped, leaving Tusan unsure of how to respond. No one rushed her. No one added another word. The room was wrapped in a very special atmosphere, quiet yet not empty, warm yet not ostentatious. The exchanged glances, the small gestures, all seemed to be waiting, as if the evening still held many things yet to be spoken, yet to be fully revealed. Tusan slowly opened the small box in her hands. Her movements were gentle, as if she were afraid of breaking the moment unfolding before her. When the lid lifted, the room's light reflected off the jewelry inside, creating soft, shimmering glints that were subtle yet impossible to ignore. A delicate necklace lay within, its center set with a small diamond stone, nothing flashy, but finely crafted, carrying a quiet elegance and grace. Tusan froze. She stared at the gift for a long time, longer than necessary to recognize what it was. Her hands trembled slightly, her fingers unconsciously tightening around the edge of the box. In that moment, too many emotions surged at once, leaving her unable to react in any ordinary way. For Tusan, what caught in her throat was not the value of the necklace, nor the sparkle of the diamond. What truly unsettled her heart was the feeling of being seen, understood, and cherished as a whole person. She had grown used to being Ivy's mother, used to having all care and attention revolve around her child. Rarely did she allow herself to think that she, too, deserved something meant just for her. And so, standing before this gift, her emotions became difficult to name: surprise, deep emotion, and the sense that for the first time in a long while, someone had placed her at the center without attaching any conditions. Tusan's gaze wavered. She looked up at Hai, then turned to Hung and Hoai Ca. Each of them wore a different expression, yet shared one thing in common: genuine care. She could clearly feel that this moment was not a display or a staged gesture, but the result of quiet thoughtfulness, of small acts of attention gathered over time. Hoai Ca stood beside her, looking at Tusan with an unmistakable sense of admiration. She noticed Tusan's hands trembling lightly, saw her lashes flutter as if holding something back. Inside Hoai Ca rose a complex emotion, both compassion and pride. Compassion, because Tusan had endured so many hardships; pride, because at last, she was being placed exactly where she deserved to be. Hoai Ca turned to Hung, the corner of her lips lifting into a very slight smile. It wasn't a loud, joyful smile, but a quiet sense of satisfaction. Hung caught that look, and something inside him softened. Watching Tusan stand there, he felt both grateful and reassured in his own way. At least in this moment, his sister was no longer someone who had to carry everything alone. Hung then turned to Hoai Ca, his voice carrying a hint of his familiar teasing, yet steady and sincere. He said that he wasn't as wealthy as others, couldn't give sparkling gifts like that, but he promised that one day, when he was in a better position, he would buy something for Hoai Ca as well. The words sounded light, but beneath them lay a sincerity that needed no embellishment. That was how Hung expressed his care, not with grand gestures, but with clarity and constancy. Hoai Ca laughed softly, her laughter gentle and natural. For her, those words were already enough to warm her heart. As a sister-in-law, she had never expected expensive gifts or lofty promises. All she wanted was companionship, the feeling of being present in moments like this. To witness Tusan being loved, to see Hung caring in his own quiet way, was already a great comfort to her. The room was not loud, yet it was filled with emotion. Ivy was still busy with her new toys, occasionally giggling, creating a sound that felt wonderfully ordinary. Tusan remained standing there, holding the small box, her eyes still fixed on the necklace. She took a deep breath, as if trying to contain the feelings swelling in her chest. No one rushed Tusan to speak or act. Everyone understood that some emotions need time to sink in, need silence for one to truly face oneself. And within that silence, every glance, every smile, every small gesture came together to create a very special atmosphere, one where family bonds, genuine care, and unspoken feelings quietly intertwined, gentle yet profound. Tusan quietly raised her hand to wipe away the tears that had just begun to fall. She didn't cry out loud, only silent tears, slow and restrained, as if they had been held back for far too long and were only now finding their way out. Her breath trembled slightly, her chest rising and falling with emotions she couldn't yet name. She looked up, her eyes still wet, toward her older brother. Hung was standing there, saying very little, yet the look he gave her carried more comfort than any words ever could. In that moment, Tusan realized that her brother had always been there. He had simply chosen to stand a little farther back, giving her the space to live according to her own choices. She then turned to Hoai Ca. Her sister-in-law stood close by, one hand still resting gently on Tusan's shoulder, a presence that felt solid and real. There was no pity in Hoai Ca's eyes, only understanding and tenderness. Tusan felt her nose sting again. Though only a sister-in-law, Hoai Ca had given her a kind of care that even blood relatives sometimes struggled to express fully. Without many words, simply by being there at the right moment, Hoai Ca made Tusan feel accepted and embraced as an inseparable part of this family. Then Tusan looked toward Hai. He was still standing there, as calm as ever. He didn't rush forward, nor did he appear impatient. His gaze met hers directly, no avoidance, no pressure. In that look, Tusan didn't see sympathy, but respect. She felt that Hai didn't see her as someone who needed to be rescued, but as a woman worthy of love given with equality and sincerity. For the first time in a long while, Tusan felt her heart soften. In that moment, a very clear feeling rose within her, the sense that she was no longer alone. Not dependence, but presence. There were people here, not because of duty or obligation, but because they genuinely wanted to be by her side. That realization left Tusan both moved and unsettled, as if she were learning again how to receive love after a long time of being used only to giving it. In another corner of the room, Ivy was still happily playing with her new toys. Her laughter rang out, bright and carefree, completely untouched by the emotions flowing among the adults. Ivy sat comfortably in Hoai Ca's arms, playing and chatting to herself, occasionally looking up with a wide smile. That image made Tusan realize something very clearly. Her daughter was growing up surrounded by emotional abundance, in the arms of many people who truly loved her. That evening, from the outside, might have looked like nothing more than a simple birthday celebration. But for those present, it meant much more than that. It wasn't just Ivy's birthday, and it wasn't only Tusan's birthday either. It was a deeply meaningful moment for Hung and Hoai Ca, a moment that brought them real peace of mind. Peace, seeing with their own eyes that their sister no longer had to carry everything alone, no longer stood silently behind it all. Peace, seeing Tusan slowly beginning to live in love, to be protected, to be placed in her rightful position as a sister, a woman, a mother within the true meaning of a family. No one spoke these thoughts out loud, yet that sense of reassurance was visible in every glance and every small gesture. Hùng no longer wore his usual heaviness. Hoai Ca couldn't hide her relieved smile, and Hai stood there, quiet yet steady. It was as if they all shared the same unspoken understanding, that this moment mattered deeply, even without words. The small house was wrapped in a warmth all its own. Not loud, not showy, but enough for each person to feel that they were exactly where they belonged. And somewhere within that calm, emotions continued to spread softly, as if this story was far from over. What happened that evening was only a small part of a much longer journey ahead. There are still many unspoken thoughts, many emotions yet to be named, and many choices waiting for each of them. Stay tuned for the next episode to discover what unfolds next in this story. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment to share your feelings and continue walking alongside the characters in the chapters to come.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Cái này đâu phải. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo. Bye bye.